Laredo is a border town in South Texas. It is the busiest crossing for commercial traffic on the Mexican border. Just outside the city limits, there is a rancher tending to a broken fence. And he notices a black pickup truck with tinted windows. It's on his property line. It's idling. And he wonders, what is that guy doing? And then the truck pulls away. The rancher sees something on the ground. What is that? So he goes to investigate. And he finds something horrible.
That's been 911.
Hi, I'm here at 83 in Jeffries Road, and maybe half a mile to the right. I believe I found there's a dead body there.
Every homicide case starts with one. But it doesn't always end there.
We had a serial killer in our midst. He's targeting these people.
We didn't know what we were coming up against.
Me sacó la pistola. Help me, help me.
He is not going to stop. They're going to have to stop him.
He's in here. Come out! Walk away, okay? State police! Hey, 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 hey!
I'm Captain Federico Calderon from the Webb County Sheriff's Office. I've been working for the Sheriff's Office for about almost 18 and a half years. I started off as a patrol deputy and worked my way through investigations and eventually became an investigation supervisor.
Supervision requires an overview that detectives don't have to have. The commander is pursuing everything. If you do it correctly, it consumes you. Calderon is consumed by it, just like I was.
I'm on my way right now. I'm getting in the car.
The call came in on a holiday, so I wasn't at work. But being a supervisor for investigations, you're always working.
To play the game, you've got to be in the game. Sitting behind a desk, you're not going to learn anything. Get out there where the action is.
The crime scene. This is an area which is a sort of a farm road that only the residents that live out there would be traveling on.
It's not a place you would be expected to get called to for a crime scene for a potential murder.
14
The victim was lying face down.
What do we got?
It's a female. No ID.
There was very obvious head trauma, so she was a little bit harder to identify.
Calderon has the same problem anyone does, looking at a gunshot wound to the head in a female. It's just a mass of blood. You can't tell where the hit was or whether it was front to back or back to front. You can't tell until you get him in a morgue.
There was something very unique in this case that the victim was clenching a bag of candy in their hand.
It is often referred to as the death grip, but in reality, it's all the muscles exerting themselves at the same instant, because the nervous system has been disconnected from the brain. So they have this grip that cannot be broken. Also at the crime scene are 3 expended casings from a semi-automatic pistol.
The shell casings They weren't the steel case or the aluminum case. It's a premium brass cartridge. It stood out.
They're 40 caliber, 40 S&W. That caliber is so effective, it is commonly used by law enforcement and by federal agents. It is the kind of ammunition that an average street criminal wouldn't even consider obtaining because it's expensive. So it says to Calderon, whoever this is knows guns.
Good afternoon, sir.
So the next step, of course, is to speak to the person who found the remains. So Calderon questions the rancher.
He said that he saw a vehicle driving around the ranch road, and he assumed that that truck played a role in whatever was happening there.
I didn't see her right away, but I did get a license plate number.
That is a remarkable fact that never happens. Witnesses normally can't tell you what color the car was. This guy's descriptive. He said it's a black pickup with heavily tinted windows, relatively new, nice condition, clean, and this is the plate number, Texas plates. Well, that's a great witness.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Calderon's next step is to go to the morgue and see exactly what we're looking for.
Autopsies are so important. They give us a window into the final moments of that person's life, and they tell us how and why that person died.
They're able to clearly see that she has 3 gunshot wounds to the head, administered close range, less than 18 inches, and further, a gunshot wound of the wrist. If you think about watching someone eating a bag of M&Ms, they often hold it in their hand, and they raise it to their mouth and dump in a few M&Ms. When she takes those rounds, one of them exits her head and goes through her wrist. And that's why she's got that bag in her head. She was eating M&Ms when she's executed by somebody.
She didn't expect what was coming.
So Calderon asked the coroner, what else can you tell me about this girl?
There was a toxicology screen done by the doctor, and it did come back to narcotics. We ran her fingerprints, and she was identified. Our victim was Melissa Ramirez. She is somebody who our investigators and our jail staff was familiar with. She was a habitual drug user who was involved in prostitution as well.
So now it was going to be a challenge for law enforcement trying to find who did this, right? Given the work she did. She's the perfect victim.
There are people in the world who prey upon sex workers because they're easily obtained. You don't have to force your victim into the car. They just get in. So your suspect pool has grown well beyond associates and known persons. But Calderon has something going for him in this case. He's got a license plate of a truck that was inches away from this dead body.
The plan was to identify that vehicle and track down the owner of the truck.
They run the plate, and Calderon is speechless. The registration comes back to a local police officer, Gustavo Lopez. That's who owns the truck. Good God, how could this be? What is he up to next to this body? Calderon has a suspect who is a police officer named Gustavo Lopez. He looks into his history with the department and finds some things that are rather questionable. Lopez tends to be aggressive with the public. A number of complaints had been received about him, and one was so serious, he was placed on probation.
That was a little bit concerning, considering the circumstances.
Let's have a conversation, Gustavo, and see what you have to say. You question a police officer the same way you question anyone else. There is no professional courtesy, particularly when you're considered a suspect, and Calderon has a very good reason to believe he is.
By the time we got around to talking to him, he knew what we were looking for him in reference to.
Was that a piece of property that I was going to buy?
Okay.
He said, I took my 2 kids with me out to that spot to show them a piece of ground I was thinking about buying to see what the view would be like. What body are you talking about?
The body, it was not hidden and it was not hard to see. The idea that a law enforcement officer would have completely not seen that was difficult to work around.
But Calderon checks with the real estate company and confirms that Lopez has been in contact with them for weeks about the piece of ground adjacent to the eyewitness's property.
I generally don't believe in coincidences, but at the end of the day, we didn't have anything on him to continue with him being a lead suspect. I think, in general, criminal investigations can feel overwhelming. You have to develop your own information, and you have to go out there and talk to family members.
Nobody likes it. It's ugly, it's nasty, but you're the boss, it's your responsibility. Take the responsibility and go deal with it.
Cuando entraron a la galería de mi casa, lo primero que me dijeron, encontramos a su hija fallecida. Sentí que se me fue la sangre. Grité y les dije, pásenle para adentro. No quería que me escucharan afuera llorar. Estaba llorando fuerte.
We talked to Melissa's mom. She was hurting, emotionally and physically, but she gave us a lot of good information about Melissa.
Yo crecí en Nuevo Laredo y de acá pues nacieron mis hijos, acá se criaron. Ella es la más chiquita de mis hijas. Melissa era una muchacha muy alegre. Le gustaba ir a la escuela. Ella decía que quería ser doctora.
She would always have like this good attitude always, and always a happy and good feeling whenever we were together.
Oh my gosh, she had a really particular laugh. Even if somebody would get mad at her, she would say something so you can laugh at it and be like, oh, you can't get mad at her. She did have 2 children. She was the best mother. She made sure those kids had a good family and a good place for them. She loved her kids a lot.
Fue ya de grande cuando se me salió del carril, como dice. Ya después me di cuenta que, pues, por una amiga que empezó a andar mal.
She has an arrest 10 years ago for prostitution. She's also addicted to narcotics.
She would always keep her things to herself. It was really quite difficult for us to help her to see what was really wrong with her.
Many sex workers have a story that begins when they become involved in narcotics. They need money. The only thing left for them is to sell their own body.
The last time I saw her, I was there at my mother-in-law's house, and she wanted to confess something, but she didn't know how to say it.
Fue el 14 de agosto, cuando estábamos ahí en la casa platicando y de repente se sentó en la sala y me dijo, me van a matar, me van a hacer así. Y le dije, no me digas eso, Melissa.
There's this constant drumbeat of violence that's always on the edges of being a sex worker. You are at risk all the time. So Calderon gets a lot of information about Melissa, but what he doesn't get is a solid lead on a possible suspect.
So, in the lack of any leads or evidence, we had to develop our own.
So like any good detective, Fred Calderon went to the source. He wanted to get down to where Melissa was working.
There was a stretch of road, San Bernardo. It's in an older part of town, a bit more run down. It's known for the area that the prostitutes frequent.
Everybody knows if you drive around San Bernardo late night, you're gonna see people picking up people.
Calderon wants to speak to the girls to see if anybody knows Melissa, to see who she hangs out with. Did anybody see her go with anybody?
It was like they say old-fashioned police work. It was exactly that. Driving up on the streets, walking up and down, trying to talk to these people. Even though, for the most part, we're plainclothes, we still looked like cops.
Nothing you could really tell me about that?
That's just her.
It's the last type of person they want to talk to.
Oh, hey. They know who the cops are. They can feel it.
For a good time?
After we explained we're investigating a crime that happened to somebody who was potentially in their same shoes, some people chose to talk to us. Through one of the field interviews, the name Claudine Luetta came up.
She was a sex worker. The same situation of Melissa, that she has addictions. They were really good friends. They work in the same area in San Bernardo.
Which means she could be an eyewitness to who picked up Melissa the night she was killed.
So we attempted to ask around, where is she? Where can we find her?
But Calderon has no luck. No one seems to know where Claudine is. But he does come up with a few names of male customers who are relatively well known among the prostitute crowd on San Bernardo Avenue. So he gathers up these names, gets associated license plate numbers, and he has a plan in mind. His plan includes the United States Border Patrol.
They have, assets that read license plates, and they have databases with unique information that may not be the same information we have or that the state does.
It literally can track every car and where it moves in a 30 square mile area around the city of Laredo, Texas. So this system is quite sophisticated. Calderon is going to provide the list of individuals to Special Agent Juan David Ortiz, who is a supervisor in the surveillance system controlled by the Border Patrol.
We gave them these names, and I said, see what you can come up with on them. Could be previous criminal history that's strictly federal related, whether it be a license plate crossing or who was inside the vehicle with them when they went through the checkpoint or through the bridge or something. You never know.
They search the system for the plate numbers and the individual names. And they get no result. But at the end of the day, an officer who works the San Bernardo Avenue area calls Calderon and says, I have this guy. He was seen with Melissa Ramirez on the night she disappeared, and his name is Dominic Ortega. Now that's really interesting information.
He said that sometimes she'd go to his house, so we felt like he was definitely a lead we had to go after.
And when Calderon plugs his name into the police database, things get really interesting. Mr. Ortega lives less than a mile from where Melissa's body was found. Well, Mr. Ortega, you could be the one. So Captain Calderon receives a tip about a client of Melissa Ramirez named Dominic Ortega.
He lived on the same part of town where the body was discovered.
Calderon goes to speak to Ortega, where his job is,
Dominic Ortega?
What's this about?
and discovers the encounter to be rather confrontive.
We have reason to believe that you were with Melissa the night she disappeared.
But when Calderon tells him that Melissa Ramirez has been murdered, he changes his attitude completely.
He said they weren't strangers. He had picked her up before. She had been to his house.
He is not only a regular customer of Melissa's, he's also her friend.
Can you tell us about that night?
Ortega explains that he picked her up on a date, and they went back to his house, and she got high. And then she passed out.
He obviously hired her for a different reason.
Finally, she woke up, and by this moment, Dominic Ortega had changed his mind. He just took her home. That's the last time he ever saw her.
He was 100% cooperative, and we had information from his employer that he was at a distant location. So we felt that it was very unlikely that this was a person who had committed the crime.
Over the next few days, Calderon feeds a few more names and license plates to Agent Ortiz of the Border Patrol, but they don't work out either. So this case is beginning to lose its force.
Okay. You write it down.
An unsolved murder is always a bad thing, but we were trying and we were exhausting every lead we had.
And then September 13th, 10 days after Melissa was killed, another horrible event occurs in Laredo, Texas.
Web County 911.
I'm on Highway 25, and I've got a female in the grass laying, and I don't know if she's unconscious. She's breathing, but she's got blood all over the grass over here. So y'all better send a paramedic.
Initially, it came in as an auto pedestrian accident. They call it an autoped.
As soon as the EMTs arrive at that scene, EMT said, no. This isn't from being hit by a car. This woman's been shot in the head.
I crossed paths with the ambulance, so we sent investigators to the hospital. We had hopes that she would be able to tell us anything, something. We began processing the scene. Even from just looking at the crime scene, you could tell that something horrible had happened there. Her property was scattered everywhere. It looked like there were a stretch of drag marks where she tried to crawl after she got injured, leaving the trail of blood.
And then he sees something else that alarms him to no end.
Take a look at that.
3 .40 caliber Smith & Wesson expended casings. It's about a mile away from where Melissa Ramirez was found.
Having two similar cases on the same stretch of road with a very similar weapon, that was out of the ordinary. We felt like we were probably dealing with the same person who had done that to Melissa.
2, 3.
It had all the markings and indications that this was the beginning of a serial killer. I know we have a problem.
This time there's a purse. And the officers at the scene discover that this is, in fact, Claudine Luera, the woman Calderon couldn't find, who is a close friend of Melissa Ramirez. What is going on here? Who might be responsible for this?
Does have a cell phone here.
The purse also contained a prepaid track phone, and it wasn't locked.
Phones can be very helpful. It can tell us a lot about a person.
Can you bag this for us, please?
Calderon is really anxious to speak to the victim, but that's when he learns from the hospital that the victim is never going to speak again.
Sadly, when she was taken to the emergency room, they tried to start to work on her, is when she expired and she passed.
So once again, you have to know your victim, and you have to go out there and talk to family members. That can end up being the investigation key that unlocks what you're after.
When she passed away, I think the whole block heard me yell. It's the worst news. Those words will never leave my mind. Having to hear them say, like, yes, we can confirm that it is Claudine Luera. My first thought was, I need to get to Ciara.
It was a Friday morning. I was working at the Plasma Center downtown. My manager comes to the back and she goes, hey, Ciara, there's someone here to see you. And she was like, it's your aunt. She wants to speak to you. And I peek my head out and I could just see like their body language, like how they were looking at me. No, please don't. Please don't.
Claudine's family is able to tell Calderon a very sad story indeed. She was educated, she was bright, and slowly her life unraveled.
Claudine has 5 children. Ciara was 2 years old at the time when she had the first set of twins. And then, lo and behold, she got pregnant right away with the second set of twins. And then we started noticing with the first set of twins some characteristics. And I think getting the diagnosis of autism really hit her hard. I think that really just, brought her down into a depression. She started getting more to like prescription drugs. And then in 2009, we knew something was going on.
She was like heavily addicted to heroin at the time, and it was hard. I wanted her to do better. I wanted things to be different. I wanted my mom.
Eventually, the 5 children were taken away from her, and she wound up on San Bernardo Avenue as a sex worker.
The day that Melissa's body had been found, my mom actually called me and she spent the night. And we hadn't spent the night together since I was like 13 years old. And I was really in shock. Like, I was like, okay, something's wrong. I just know her saying like she feared her life. She knew Melissa wasn't gonna be the only one. Little did I know then that that would be the last time that I'd ever see her again.
To learn that your mother has suddenly been ripped away from you, absolutely devastating. And to make matters worse, now we have 2 victims working in the same industry, killed in exactly the same way in similar locations. And no one has a clue as to who might be responsible.
When the second case happened, Claudine, it was like what is going on?
We had a serial killer in our midst. He's targeting these people. He's targeting sex workers. And I'm telling the sheriff's department, you guys need to find this killer or there's gonna be more. There's gonna be more.
We were feeling the pressure from the community and our bosses as well. We're trying to track down every bit of every lead that we had.
Calderon goes back to check with his tech team regarding the contents of the track phone that Claudine Luera had in her purse.
At that point, we discovered a picture of Claudine with another male, taken recently.
There are a number of text messages between Claudine and an individual known as Hector Vega on the night of her murder. They look up Hector Vega. Vega is a drug addict. Vega's committed aggravated assault in the past. Could he be our guy? Absolutely.
So we got back to work and we started looking for him. We have vehicles parked at his house. And at some point, he shows up and he realizes that there's some cop cars and he takes off.
If they had any doubts about Hector Vega being a possible suspect, it's been erased by his flight. Innocent people don't run, and Hector is running. Detective Calderon summons a number of cruisers to his location. They try to pursue Hector in his car.
Highway speeds inside the city aren't anything that anybody needs to be doing, ever.
He's weaving in and out of streets, making hard turns. And all of a sudden,
we couldn't see him anymore. The officer said, hey, he's gone. They disengaged, and we tried to find him using other means.
Hector's in the wind. Is that frustrating? Oh, my. Yes, it is. Calderon is well aware. If the suspect moves across the border, his case is doomed.
It's not until the next day we get a call at the police department. Someone wanted to come forward and talk.
Well, guess who it was? Mr. Hector Vega. The runaway guy and skilled stunt driver is now sitting in a police station by his own volition. What happened? Calderon asked Hector, why did you run? Oh, man, I had drugs on me. So I started to run. And then I thought about Claudine. I heard what happened to Claudine. I was friends with her.
He started telling us that they hung out and, used drugs.
We met up for a bit last night, and then she went back out to San Bernardo.
I figured you guys put two and two together, and you think I did this, and I didn't do this.
He said that was the last time he had seen her until he heard that she had been found dead. He was genuinely disturbed and distraught. I'm sure it was difficult for him to try and understand that when she left his company, she ended up getting killed shortly after.
Calderon is experienced and has talked to a lot of people, both suspects and otherwise, and Hector comes across as legitimate. He's not the best person in the world, but he's not a killer.
It's difficult getting your hopes up, and then at the end, falling short. But it's something that happens in any criminal investigation, and you just got to pick up the pieces, reassess, and come up with a new game plan and go forward again.
There's still this maniac serial killer running around killing everyone. And if he's done two, he's going to do more. You know that the person responsible for this picks up women on San Bernardo Avenue. We need to surveil San Bernardo Avenue.
We were driving up and down, looking for anything out of the ordinary.
They see some different cars they haven't seen before. They pass those plate numbers on to the United States Border Patrol by and through Supervisor Ortiz, and nothing comes of it. Nobody emerges as anybody with a history, anybody with anything.
Calderon did a great job in a case of this magnitude. He was relentless, following leads and interviewing people and doing what any good investigator is doing. but being in this line of work for 28 years, sometimes you need a lucky break. In this case, that's what he got.
It is September 14th, day 11 in the investigation, when a Texas state trooper pulls into a gas station to fuel his car.
It's sometime around 9 p.m. out of nowhere. This female comes running to him dressed in jeans, and she doesn't have a blouse or shirt on.
Oh, excuse me. What?
And she's screaming, "He's trying to kill me." The trooper puts his hand in his gun and looks behind her for threats and sees none.
He deploys his body cam.
She's terrified. She's shaking uncontrollably.
Her eyes are just wide open, speaking real fast, unintelligible.
Ahorita te ayudo. Just tranquila.
At this point in time, he's thinking that he's interacting with a drug addict or some homeless person who's just talking gibberish, right? But the more he talks to her, things start to get serious real quick.
Me sacó la pistola y me quería subir y yo empecé a gritar, "Help me, help me."
The guy just pointed a gun at her face.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Erica.
Erica, ¿qué?
Well, now, what does Erica Pena do? She's a sex worker on San Bernardo Avenue. Oh, my.
Being aware that there is an ongoing investigation for somebody killing sex workers, he makes the connection.
Just relax, take deep breaths. So
2 and 2 equals 4. She is a living witness to whoever this killer is, who's already killed 2 and just now attempted to kill a 3rd one.
Saca las pistolas y yo abrí la puerta. Help, help.
Erica Pena has escaped somebody who just pointed a gun at her face.
I'm very scared.
Don't worry, you're
afraid, sir.
She is hyperventilating. She's got fear and adrenaline that are going through her.
The girl they killed, Melissa Ramirez, we started talking about her. He got very weird all of a sudden, very nervous.
He did, okay.
She mentioned Melissa's name, Claudine's name, seeing as who she was and kind of the circumstances. The trooper thought that it might have something to do with what me and the ranger were investigating. So he called.
She knows the victim, the girl, the deceased girl. With that in mind, I said, you know what? This probably might be a lead. Yeah, you want me to take over there?
Calderon. He wants to talk to her right now.
The trooper shows up and she is crying. She's scared. She's convinced that, someone's coming after her to kill her. So I go inside, get her a shirt from somewhere inside the station, and she was able to tell her story. She begins telling us how she knew this client of hers by the name of David, and that David had picked her up on San Bernardo, the same area Melissa and Claudine worked and frequented.
She gets in the truck with him. He said, "I'm going to take you to my house because my wife and kids are away for the weekend." So off they go. Once they get inside, they're just talking.
And the conversation at some point came up about Melissa and Claudine.
And she said his whole demeanor changed.
She says that he was grabbing the back of his neck and that he was making weird noises. And she started feeling really uneasy.
David has a look, like she described, just a real scary look.
Erica felt like he might have had something to do with it, and she started, freaking out, for lack of a better word.
She has this overwhelming sense of nausea, sick feeling in her stomach comes over her.
Y donde yo salgo para afuera me quiero vomitar. Estoy bien. That's when I knew it's because it's the blood. Go, get out, get out.
She's starting to think, how can I get out of this? And without trying to tip him off, she's asking, take me somewhere.
He suggested stopping near a gas station so she could get something to eat and maybe settle her stomach.
He decides to stop in the back of the gas station, on the side of the street, in the dark. She starts at this moment thinking, it's him. He killed Melissa. He killed Claudine. It's him. He's telling her, stop freaking out.
You're not getting out. You're not getting out.
And as she starts to reach for that door handles, when he pulls that handgun out, brings it across his body and points it to her face. She was gonna be the next victim.
She became frantic and tried to escape. She said that he was trying to hold on to her and he grabbed her by the shirt.
El vato apuntándome con la esa. Así. Abrí la puerta. Estoy gritando. Help! Help!
Come here.
He pulled a shirt directly off her back, and she ran to the gas station where she sees this Texas state trooper fueling his car.
I'm glad we were able to help you.
We felt like we might be finally getting the lead we were after, and that we were looking for a David. She tells us that we need to be looking out for a white pickup truck.
And you know where the house is right now?
No, pero mi amor, vive bien. Vive bien. Quisiera que mi mamá tuviera esa casa.
She doesn't know the address of the house, but she knows the general vicinity.
She has a couple of landmarks in mind. I felt that we could reasonably drive around out there and try and locate the address. So we went to that specific neighborhood and we started looking around.
Ojalá Dios quiera queremos.
And we had several other investigators and deputies in the car to provide security.
¿Lista?
And all of a sudden she says, wait.
Esa es la casa. Es that house.
That's the house right there.
Están los steps.
Calderon's headlights come across the sidewalk, and the vomit is on the sidewalk.
And that ended up being what broke the case wide open. So once we got the address, we're checking databases, both public and police databases, to see who are we dealing with.
And when he sees the name, he is absolutely stunned into silence. It's not just someone he knows. It's someone who's working alongside him in this very case. Calderon goes back to the station, runs the address, and now he has the name. He never could have predicted what he finds. The ghost that Calderon has been seeking is, in fact, Juan David Ortiz, a supervisor with the United States Border Patrol and the agent working the case with Calderon.
He was a cop. It completely surprised all of us.
He would have been the last one that any of us would have ever imagined. It is scary to think that he was in there listening, watching, observing as the case was investigated.
Juan David Ortiz, who is now 35 years of age, was born in Brownsville, Texas, and raised by a single mother. He joined the United States Navy out of high school and was trained as a corpsman.
He had been deployed in 2003, had seen action in Iraq. He was a medic for his Marine unit.
When he gets out of the service, he decides to join the Border Patrol. He has an impeccable record. He shows empathy for immigrants coming across the border, migrants. He treats people from suffering from exposure or being in the desert. People call him Doc because of his skills.
There was nothing whatsoever, based on what we saw on Juan David Ortiz's background, that this would have been foreseeable. His record was clean.
This guy was your Laredoan neighbor. He had a steady job, he had a nice house, he had a family, went to church on Sundays. Not what you would think of when you think a serial killer.
Humans are complicated, sometimes frighteningly so. How does one go from being an all-American war hero into a psychotic killer?
So we're not dealing with an ordinary criminal. It presents a whole new dynamic.
We're dealing with a Border Patrol agent who we know carries a duty weapon that's a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, and we know that they get issued federal cartridge ammunition.
So he's using his duty weapon to carry out his rage against sex workers. He was prepared to drop victim number 3 when she interfered with that by escaping his custody. He is not going to stop. They're going to have to stop him.
The race was finding him before more victims and more bodies started to stack up.
We had the security team at his house to see if anyone came back home. That wasn't happening. Nobody got close to the house. We put out information about the plates associated with that white pickup truck being driven by Juan David Ortiz, and that he was being looked for as a person of interest in connection with Melissa and Claudine's murder.
Ortiz is not an idiot. He knows he's being looked for, so he is running.
Hours almost after Erica's escape, we get notified that a trooper is at a gas station off of San Bernardo.
State Trooper Bradshaw sees that truck matching that description parked in front of a dumpster to the left side of the gas station.
He looks through the window of the gas station, and who does he see? None other than Juan David Ortiz.
He calls it in, and Trooper Obregon also pulls in.
That's the truck right there. He walked inside.
He walked inside?
Yeah.
3845. I'm with Bradshaw. Making contact.
Now you're about to confront someone who is undoubtedly armed. You don't want to confront him in that store. You're putting the clerk at risk and you're putting everyone else. You're going to wait for him to come out.
Juan David Ortiz walks out of the Stripes store.
Stand up!
They are giving him orders.
Turn around!
Juan David Ortiz is not following orders.
Turn around! Turn around!
Get on your knees!
Turn around! Okay.
He starts acting like he's scared and he doesn't know why they want to talk to him.
Okay, I'm gonna explain to you. This truck right here is matching with the potential, with the murders that's been happening within the past 2 weeks. We just need for you to cooperate with us, okay?
It's a very high stress situation.
Just turn around.
Ortiz is thinking about what he's going to do.
Make my way, just turn around and make my way this way, okay? Hey, 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 hey!
And he sees the opportunity and he makes a run for it.
Hey, hey, hey!
Our serial killer is finally within reach. You can run, Mr. Ortiz, but you cannot hide.
David Ortiz! Come out! State police!
Just turn around.
Juan David Ortiz has finally been located,
Hey, 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 hey!
but he seems to have no interest in giving himself up.
Hey, hey, hey!
Ortiz sees an opportunity and he bolts. He's able to get that little lead on these two troopers. And they lose sight of him running towards the parking lot of the Ava Hotel.
He went inside here. He's in here.
They stop their foot chase and they ask for backup.
He's in here, bro. Yeah.
Ortiz has run into a parking garage. This particular parking garage has several levels. Is he going to steal a car? What's he going to do?
So they think he's inside the building or what? They're pretty sure. Bueno.
A couple minutes after is when I show up with the ranger and the rest of the investigators. Immediately, we set up a perimeter.
We need a unit on that side, bro.
We block off all the exits of the building and of that city block.
So now that they know he's contained in this garage, they call a SWAT team.
Jeans, khaki shirt, bro.
But parking garages are a difficult place to search. They want people with the right equipment and the right protective gear to search this premise.
We're not going in. Let me just get the final. Okay.
While we're organizing the SWAT team to search for Ortiz in the Ava Hotel parking lot, we get a call from a passerby off of IH-35.
Okay, I just crossed the Webb interchange over here by mile marker 21 and right underneath the bridge. There's a body. I wasn't sure what it was when I drove past him, but it's a person.
Is our body count suddenly rising?
We send a deputy out there to go check, and he tells me that it's another crime scene. It's a woman face down.
The officer sees Smith & Wesson expended casings.
There's .40 caliber casings again, and we were concluding that it was probably related to Melissa and Claudine's murder.
Calderon's worst nightmare is coming true. Ortiz is continuing his work.
The victim was identified as Griselda Cantu. Also worked in prostitution, also substance abuse problems.
Griselda was a mother, and She was a good person, obviously also addictions and the same problems like the other victims.
If Ortiz escapes that garage without being arrested or killed, more bodies are going to appear. He's on a mission.
Okay, you two guys, let's start leading the way. Let's start going to where we think this guy is. Let's do it slowly and carefully.
The SWAT team are very well trained, but so is Ortiz. He knows his way around weaponry. The commander of the SWAT team announces the standard plan: clear this place one level at a time. You drive him up. You want him up. High is easy to capture, because there is no stairway to heaven.
So we used our tactical team, the SWAT team, and some troopers that went in with our SWAT team.
They formed a stack and they went up the ramp into the parking lot area of the hotel.
David Ortiz, come out! State police!
By this time, I had made my way up and I was watching from on top. I had a bird's eye view of everything going on down there.
The SWAT team clear the first level. They find nothing. They clear the second level. They still haven't found him. Is he still here? Did he somehow get out of this?
Slow down. Let me get up.
You know, one of the body cam videos, you hear the breathing. That fast-paced, hyperventilating breathing that comes with being in a high-stress situation. Every step they take, you feel that stress, thinking they're gonna be met with gunfire.
I radioed to them to make it to the top of the parking garage so we can check the rest of the parking garage.
Let's go.
As they were finishing searching the last lot,
Hey, Captain, take a look at this.
we were told that Ortiz is posting things on Facebook. And I asked, like, he's posting them now? One of the Facebook messages he posted was, "To my wife and kids, I love you." And the other one was, "Doc Ortiz, checking out, farewell."
This is not a good thing. If he's making his final goodbyes, nothing is more dangerous than that.
Based off of what they told us that he was posting, we didn't know what we were coming up against.
SWAT's mission is to take him, dead or alive. They don't care which.
David Ortiz, come out!
They assume they're going to get in a gunfight. It's been 5 hours since Erica Pena escaped the clutches of the serial killer Juan David Ortiz. And now Calderon and his SWAT team hope to have him cornered in a parking garage.
We used the SWAT team searching the floor by car, under cars, behind pickup trucks. And as they were finishing searching the last lot,
There is a black truck, and Juan David Ortiz is in that truck.
Get down! Get down! Watch out, watch out.
they started giving him commands, and they took him down.
Let's talk. Got it.
They pull him out of that truck and cuff him.
Where's the weapon at, man? Hey, where's the weapon? Huh?
He doesn't have a gun on his person, so he has made the decision not to die and not to kill any policemen.
There's a big sense of relief that nobody was harmed, nobody was shot, that everything worked out.
Hey, you guys want a trophy shot? No. We ain't about that, man. A trophy shot. I took them all the time, bro.
No, Juan, we're not like you. We don't do that.
They immediately put him in a car, asked me what we wanted to do with him, and I had him transported to the substation.
What was that call that you got?
We got him. We got him. Those are the first words I hear, and I just remember saying, okay, you know what, I'll let me get ready and get over there.
At that point, there was some degree of, sleep deprivation, but the case was too important to put on the back burner.
I get into one of the closed circuit rooms, and I take my seat there at the table, and I'm taking notes and just watching this thing play out.
Yeah, who's the trooper I spoke, man? The trooper that couldn't keep up with me, dude. Tell him he needs to work out some more, man.
He was acting actually pretty cocky. He was very proud of himself that he was able to outrun the troopers, and that gave us a little bit of insight into his personality. Knowing that we were dealing with another cop, it was going to be more of a challenge getting him to talk.
You want to know what?
We decided to approach him calmly and build a rapport with him.
Sounds like you're pretty educated. And looks like you were the law enforcement work out there. Why are we here?
He begins by denying any knowledge of what they're asking him about.
Please. Brother, you did this.
We bring out photos of the victims. We bring out photos of the crime scene.
This is Claudine. Y'all know what happened to her? She's dead now.
We just want to see his reaction to his work, to what he did.
But you left her? When the trooper found her, she was still talking. That's what she looked like before.
He said he didn't know any of them. It was complete denial, so we locked him into that denial.
She happened today.
And the evidence is showing us what they have.
You guys have the evidence? Like I said, I don't recall.
I knew that this was going to be a long night based on what was going on.
You just stayed at the house? You didn't go out?
Slowly, calmly, of course, and as carefully as we could, we were starting to confront him with his own lies.
There's the heroin syringe and a condom in there. That's in your truck, with your .40 caliber pistol and your bloody boots.
We found where the gun was, which was in the door panel.
Calderon is pushing his buttons and telling him how much they know about this case and why he will not escape punishment for this. You're just a killer like anybody else, and we're going to hammer you flat.
JD, what got casings?
Got the bullets.
Where's the bullets?
You're getting past his defensive shield, and you're getting to him.
JD, look at me. Can you please take this off? I'm not going to attack you.
When he asked that question, I'm thinking to myself, take the handcuffs off. Take the handcuffs off. The guy wants to talk. I turn to everybody who's in that room and I say, guys, get ready, here it comes. And from there, the floodgates open.
Take her out.
He begins to tell us that he did know Melissa and that it's a person he had picked up before.
Can you just buy me something, a drink, buy me something to eat? I'm really bad right now. So we're going,
He says they would have gone and bought some heroin. And she took and injected herself in his truck.
Yeah, she's got a complete deep sleep. Driving around.
At one point, he said she started coming to, and she became belligerent.
He said that she was aggressive. She started to insult him.
They told Calderon she became too pushy. She needed to go away. Well, all right then.
He pulled over to let her go to the bathroom. He said that at that point, he saw the opportunity.
Did she try to assault you?
Se salió. And it happened. I got in my truck and I drove straight to my house, took my little wife and kids, and I showered and I laid down.
Wow. Juan, you're really crazy.
And then I was continuing driving on Sunbed. This sort of monster came out.
What happens next is what happens to all people who become killers. Their appetite increases, and the thrill of the bloodletting is what drives them now.
I picked up this stupid chick, and they said we could talk nonstop. Nadine. Yeah. So she bought her heroin, whatever, and she brings up, hey, did you hear Melissa? Yeah, I've seen him on the map. And he's all like, would it be really up for we go see it?
She goes, you really want to go there? I'll take you there. As they're driving out there, they start to go on these desolate farm roads in the middle of nowhere. She starts to get scared.
No, dude. No, that. No, dude. No, I don't want to go after her. No. I think he's like really freaking.
She starts pointing at him, saying, it's you. You killed her.
You're probably the killer. You're about to shut. You're probably. Get out of my car.
She was trying to run away, and there had been a struggle.
Go! Stop!
I don't think she's gonna go.
To me, it was not a coincidence that Claudine was killed on the 13th.
We were actively, at one point, looking for Claudine because she may have either mentioned that she saw Melissa or she knows who was with Melissa.
It's probably why he killed her. He didn't want to take any chances.
Then the next day, it was not meant to be the way it happened with Erica.
Help me.
I really watched this movie around.
After Erica escaped, Juan David Ortiz goes back to his home. He takes out an arsenal of weapons, expecting law enforcement to show up.
Grab my 9mm, grab my 40 cal, start loading them. Grab my AR-15, start loading them.
Law enforcement doesn't show up. He makes a decision to go out and start hunting.
People, they don't have jobs. They're all I want them to clean up the streets.
He possesses this resentment towards these workers, and his solution is to get rid of them.
He's just going to eliminate them because they don't matter. They're not human. They're insects, and they have to be stepped on. Wow.
I went outside and I picked up otra chick that I had never, esta hetero que I had no idea who the she is, I don't know her name.
Ends up being Huiselda Cantu. He drives north on I-35. He exits around the 22-mile marker and tells her to get off his truck.
He tells her that he's the one who's been killing the prostitutes.
I said, walk that way, go left, listen to me. Walk that way, you're gonna go to that area.
He describes how she turns around and tells him, you don't have to do this. You're a good person. I want to pray with you.
Look, please, just go away, okay? I'm telling you to walk away. Just walk away, okay? Walk away.
He loses his temper because she's trying to talk him out of it.
I'm telling you to walk away. You're not listening to me.
Do you think this was like a sick game, or do you think he may have had a change of heart?
I think he was going to kill her the whole time. I think that's just a fact that he interjected in order to minimize his culpability.
All of his conversations are designed to minimize his involvement in something evil because it isn't evil. It's the right thing to do. And I had the courage to do it. Swell.
Catching me out, I was like, I'm clean up the streets.
At that point in time, the proverbial question is posed, is there anyone else? And Juan David Ortiz says, there's one more that you guys don't know about.
Oh my. Juan David Ortiz has admitted to killing 3 women. But then he tells Calderon there's a 4th victim that he doesn't know about.
As soon as he started saying the location of where he left that person, they took off to go verify.
It was at 13 miles north of Laredo. There was a gravel mound of asphalt, and over to the right in the tall green grass, they were going to find the body.
The victim is 28-year-old Janelle Ortiz, no relation to the suspect. She is transgender and she has been shot in the head.
My name is Rosenda Rochelle Ortiz, and I am Janelle's youngest sister. September 16th, I get that call that you don't expect to hear, that it is Janelle. And I just broke down. I couldn't handle what I heard. Janelle was 9 years older than me. Growing up in her teen years, she was already transitioning. She didn't care what other people thought about her. She was really outgoing. She had a lot of friends. She was just that type of person that you can go up to when you needed a hug, you needed someone to talk to, just someone that was there. I just had that bond with her that I would never have with no other.
By this time, I know that you guys are looking for me because of Erica. Old life is coming to an end.
He picked up Janelle Ortiz. He said that he started driving north toward Edge 35.
He starts looking. I was just driving. And I just Estás solo. It's you, isn't it?
Janelle Ortiz asks Juan David Ortiz, "You're gonna kill me, right?" And Juan David Ortiz looks at Janelle and says, "Yeah."
He said that he was surprised that he didn't get any fight out of Janelle Ortiz.
Get out of the truck.
And he pulls into the 13-mile marker. Janelle gets out. Juan David Ortiz walks around his truck, stands behind Janelle.
Turn around.
Shot it one time.
Gets back in his truck, drives back to San Bernardo. He leaves her body right there.
Mr. Ortiz kills 2 women in less than 2 hours. He has to kill more. He's not satisfied yet.
He was going to keep cleaning up the streets, quote unquote, until somebody stopped him.
We just need for you to cooperate with us, okay?
And luckily, those troopers were at the right place at the right time that night.
It was something I've never seen before, never in 28 years, seen something play out the way it did, as descriptive and as animated as he was.
The question always becomes, why did this happen? Men hate prostitutes, in my humble opinion, because they hate themselves for doing what they do, to engage in sex for money. He made a comment, the monster in him came out. I disagree, Mr. Ortiz. You are the monster. It's not inside you. It is you.
When we found out that they had gotten the suspect, it was just shocking news for us to know that it was a Border Patrol, someone that supposedly we need to feel protected.
I really was just so in shock. Like, I couldn't believe, like, it was a Border Patrol agent. I couldn't fathom it. I was just so distraught. It was really, really surreal. That just, like, threw me over. Like, what do you mean it's a Border Patrol agent? It was hard to grasp.
After all the carnage that Juan David Ortiz left behind, Melissa Ramirez's mom is interviewed, and she comes out there and says, "I'm not in favor of the death penalty."
Y si a él le daban la pena de muerte, no iba a pagar lo que hizo. Pagando que sufra lo que hizo.
For him, it was worth going to trial so that he could maybe get a lesser charge and ultimately a lesser sentence.
It was scary walking into that courtroom, finally seeing him, who he was. I felt the urge to scream so loud, but I couldn't. I just sat there and looked at him, and my tears kept rolling down.
Sentí rabia, sentí mucho coraje, sabiendo que estaba frente al asesino de mi hija.
The truth here is that Juan David Ortiz committed capital murder. He is guilty. We were able to transport, if you will, the jury to the last moments of these victims' deaths. We also put him in the interview room with the Texas Ranger and Captain Calderon.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Erica.
Erica, ¿qué?
Erica was part of the trial, and she had a very important role to play.
Tell us about what you remember when he pulled the gun.
He just pointed it right at me, just like this.
Because of her, we were able to bring justice to the rest of the families.
back for it. Like, I hugged her, I cried with her. Like, she's our hero, you know, and she's so strong. I don't have the right words to thank her.
Was it a unanimous verdict?
Yes, it was.
Can you please hand the verdict form to the bailiff? Verdict form. We, the jury, find the defendant, Juan David Ortiz, guilty of the offense of capital murder as charged in the indictment and as instructed in this charge.
The jury was able to arrive at him being guilty of capital murder, life without parole.
So long, Mr. Ortiz. Let's lock you up in a box and feed you bologna sandwiches for the rest of your life and see what you think of that.
I was feeling so relieved. I was like, thank God, justice was served.
I felt this relief after we got our justice. Like, this relief left my chest. We got the verdict we wanted, but he ruined our life. He changed everything, you know? He caused, like, so much trauma.
Y todos los días, aquí lo traigo a él. Yo nunca le he deseado la muerte a nadie, ni mal a nadie, pero que me digan que ya se murió él.
Regardless of what J.D. Ortiz thought about these people, they are mothers, their sisters, their daughters, and nobody deserves to get treated the way they were treated, regardless of their lifestyle.
Melissa was just the best mother that she could be for her kids. It saddens me a lot the way people just judge you.
In life, we're not always going to make the right decisions. And sadly, weakness can take a toll on a person. And yes, you know, Claudine took a life to the streets, but it didn't define her. She had her children, she had her family who loved her.
You know, my mom was such a beautiful soul. Like, we all have our vices. Like, she wasn't a bad person. I try to do everything with love the way she did.
Janelle still pops up in my dreams. It's just a reminder, you know, that she's out there looking out for us. I love you, Janelle. You're always in my heart.
No one is above the law, and no one is below the law in the state of Texas.
Court adjourned.
We were able to expose J.D. Ortiz. People like him need to be stopped, and luckily, there are police all over the country who are willing to do the job.
Good police work thinks, rethinks, restarts, re-engages, always looking. And Federico Calderon is an example of that. You don't believe that? Ask Juan David Ortiz if he believes that. This season on American Detective, there are moments in criminal investigations that a bad feeling comes over you.
These are monsters. You look into their eyes and, you know, you're coming up zeros.
That's not just a red light. That's a solar flare.
It looked like something you would see in a horror film.
I have never seen a body that destroyed.
Just when you think you've seen the worst in somebody, the next person's like, hold my beer.
A passenger in her car had been abducted.
What if our killer is a cop?
She said, please tell me it's not true. Tell me Melissa's house is not on fire.
When you get information that there's a child missing, it knocks the wind out of you.
There is freshly fallen snow, and there is no physical evidence to be seen. If you think this is going to end well, you're sorely mistaken, my dear.
The night the desert swallowed her, no one heard her scream. The highway lay empty, a ribbon of black cutting through the endless plains of West Texas, and the wind carried only the dry scent of dust and mesquite. Somewhere beyond the reach of headlights, a single set of footprints pressed into the sand, then vanished, as if the earth itself had decided to erase them. By dawn, 20-year-old Emily Carter was gone, and a silence heavier than fear settled over the town of Red Hollow a silence that would stretch across decades, unanswered and unforgiving. Red Hollow was the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. A single main street, a handful of diners and gas stations, a courthouse that had not seen a major case in years, and families who had lived there long enough to know each other's secrets and still pretend they did not. On the evening of June 17, 1998, the air was thick with summer heat, the sky bruised purple as the sun sank behind the horizon. Emily left her waitressing shift at the Blue Star Diner just after 10, waved goodbye to her coworkers, and stepped into the dark parking lot. She was supposed to be home in 15 minutes. She never arrived. At first, no one panicked. Emily was responsible. Yes, but young. Maybe she stopped to see friends. Maybe her car broke down on the highway. Maybe she just needed air. But when midnight passed, then 1 a.m., and her phone went unanswered, worry crept into her mother's voice. By sunrise, fear had taken hold. Her car was found abandoned at a lonely rest stop 10 miles outside town. The driver's door stood ajar. Her purse lay on the passenger seat. The keys were missing. There were no skid marks, no signs of a struggle, no blood, no shattered glass. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels intentional, as if someone had staged the scene, careful, methodical, patient. By noon, the story had spread. Red Hollow locked its doors. Volunteers combed the desert, dragging their boots through sand and scrub, calling Emily's name until their throats burned. Helicopters circled overhead. Search dogs followed her scent to the edge of the highway, then stopped, confused, tails stiff, noses lifted toward the wind. It was as if Emily had simply dissolved into the heat. 2 days later, her body was found in a shallow ravine 30 miles south, partially concealed beneath rocks and thorny brush. The medical examiner would later describe blunt force trauma, defensive wounds, and evidence of restraint. The cause of death, asphyxiation. The manner, homicide. And just like that, Red Hollow's illusion of safety collapsed. Shock gave way to terror. Parents pulled their children indoors before sunset. Locks were double-checked. Windows stayed shut even in the suffocating heat. The town held candlelight vigils that blurred into one another, faces streaked with wax and tears. And through it all, one question echoed in every whispered conversation. Who could do this here? Investigators descended on the town, setting up temporary headquarters in the courthouse basement. Leads poured in. Ex-boyfriends. Co-workers. Truck drivers passing through. A man seen at the rest stop that night. A car spotted on the shoulder of the highway. Every detail was scrutinized, every rumor chased. But evidence was thin. The desert had devoured most of the trail. What remained was fragile, easily misread. The autopsy revealed trace biological material beneath Emily's fingernails and on her clothing. In 1998, DNA analysis was advancing, but databases were limited, technology imperfect. The samples were logged, preserved, sealed away. Investigators believed the answers were there, waiting for science to catch up. In the meantime, they built their case the old-fashioned way. Interviews stretched late into the night. Polygraph tests were administered. Alibis were dissected. Suspects were watched. But each promising lead crumbled. A coworker who had flirted too aggressively had an airtight alibi. A drifter who passed through town was tracked down states away, cleared by fingerprints. A local mechanic with a violent past had been out of state. Every trail ended in frustration. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. And slowly, painfully, the case cooled. But the absence of answers did not bring peace. It brought obsession. Emily's mother, Sarah, transformed her living room into a shrine, walls plastered with photographs, newspaper clippings, handwritten notes. She slept beneath them, waking each morning to the same frozen smile of her daughter, determined not to let the world forget. Her father, James, haunted the highways, driving the route Emily had taken that night again and again, searching for some overlooked detail, some invisible clue that might reveal the truth. The town changed. Trust eroded. Neighbors eyed one another with suspicion. Every unfamiliar face became a potential threat. Every creak in the night a reminder that the killer had never been caught, that he might still be among them, invisible, patient, waiting. In 2001, a breakthrough seemed imminent when a tip led detectives to a former oil field worker with a history of assault. His truck matched a vague witness description. Fibers in his cab resembled those found on Emily's clothing. For a moment, hope flared, but laboratory testing ruled him out. The fibers were common, the witness unreliable. The case collapsed once more. By 2005, budget cuts forced the department to shelve dozens of unsolved investigations. Emily's file, now several inches thick, was boxed and labeled cold case, a term that sounds clinical, almost gentle, but in truth signifies failure, loss, and resignation. Years passed. New families moved into Red Hollow. The Blue Star Diner renovated its facade. The rest stop where Emily's car had been found was demolished, replaced by a sterile concrete plaza. And yet, beneath the surface, the memory lingered, a quiet ache that refused to fade. In 2010, Sarah Carter died of a heart attack, never knowing who had taken her daughter. At her funeral, James whispered a promise into the casket. "I will not stop." He never did. Behind the scenes, technology marched forward. DNA databases expanded. Analytical methods sharpened. What once required weeks now took hours. Samples previously deemed unusable could suddenly yield genetic profiles. And in a climate-controlled evidence vault, Emily's biological traces waited, dormant but intact, for the moment science would finally give them a voice. That moment came in the spring of 2018, when Detective Mark Reyes, newly assigned to the department's cold case unit, reopened the Carter file. Reyes had built a reputation on persistence, on an almost obsessive refusal to accept unsolved cases. He read the reports late into the night, tracing timelines, mapping locations, reconstructing the final hours of Emily's life. He saw gaps, missed opportunities, questions no one had ever asked. And most of all, he saw DNA. He ordered the samples retested using modern techniques. Technicians worked carefully, coaxing fragile genetic material into readable sequences. Hours stretched into days, then weeks. Finally, a profile emerged. Partial, degraded, but usable. It was uploaded into the national database. For days, nothing happened. Then, at 3:17 a.m. on a quiet Tuesday morning, an automated alert shattered the silence of the lab. A hit, not a full match, but a familial connection. A genetic relative, arrested years earlier for an unrelated offense. A man living less than 200 miles from Red Hollow. The room went still. Reyes stared at the screen, heart pounding, aware that in this moment, the past was colliding with the present. Somewhere out there, the person responsible for Emily Carter's death might finally be within reach. And yet, the alert raised as many questions as it answered. Was this the killer, or a relative? Had he acted alone? Had he remained in Texas all these years, or vanished into anonymity? As dawn crept through the blinds, casting pale light across the cluttered desks and corkboards, Reyes felt the weight of 2 decades pressing down on him. 20 years of grief. 20 years of fear. 20 years of unanswered questions. And now, a fragile thread connecting it all, trembling in the glow of a computer monitor. Outside, the desert lay silent, unchanged, as if guarding its secrets. But for the first time since that summer night in 1998, the stillness felt different. Charged. Unstable. As though the truth, long buried beneath sand and memory, was finally beginning to stir. And in Red Hollow, a town that had learned to live with uncertainty, the shadow of the past was about to return, bringing with it revelations that would shatter old assumptions, expose hidden lives, and force an entire community to confront the darkest corners of its history. Because some secrets do not fade. They wait. And when they rise, they do not come quietly. The genetic hit did not arrive with thunder or sirens. It slipped into the system like a whisper, a silent pulse of data crossing invisible networks, and yet in that single moment, everything changed. Detective Mark Reyes sat alone in the cold glow of his monitor, staring at a sequence of letters and numbers that represented a human life, a genetic echo stretching backward through generations, pointing not to a name, but to a bloodline. The match was partial, a familial connection, the kind that suggested a father, a son, a brother, a cousin. It was not an answer. It was an opening. And openings, in cold cases, are rare. The relative in question was a man named Thomas Harlan, arrested in 2009 for aggravated assault during a bar fight in Lubbock. His DNA, taken as part of routine processing, now sat in the national database, quietly waiting. He was 46, divorced, a long-haul truck mechanic with a string of minor offenses and a reputation for volatility. He had no known connection to Red Hollow, but his genetic signature pointed unmistakably toward someone who did. Reyes began to build a family tree, tracing public records, birth certificates, marriage licenses, obituaries, and census data. Hours blurred into nights as he followed branches backward and outward, mapping relationships, locations, movements. The pattern slowly emerged, a web of relatives scattered across West Texas, some still alive, others long buried. And at the center of it, a cluster of men who, in 1998, were of the right age, in the right places, with the right access to the highways and back roads that crisscross the region. One name surfaced repeatedly: Daniel Harlan. Daniel was Thomas's older half-brother. In 1998, he had been 27, recently discharged from the military, drifting between oil field jobs, construction sites, and short-term labor. His employment history was fragmented, his addresses transient. He had spent several months that year in a trailer park outside Red Hollow, working maintenance for a pipeline contractor. According to payroll records, he had left abruptly in July, just weeks after Emily Carter vanished. Reyes felt the familiar tightening in his chest, the instinctive recognition that this was not coincidence. He pulled Daniel's file. No prior arrests, no outstanding warrants, no official record of violence. But there were gaps. Months unaccounted for, employers who could no longer be located, supervisors who had died, a man who seemed to exist just beyond the edges of documentation. He drove to Lubbock to interview Thomas first, hoping proximity might yield clarity. The prison visitation room smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. Thomas sat across from him, heavy-set, eyes restless, fingers drumming against the plastic table. When Reyes mentioned Emily Carter's name, Thomas frowned, confusion flickering across his face. "I don't know anything about that," he said quickly. "Never heard of her." Reyes nodded, patient. He spoke of timelines, locations, work records, the trailer park outside Red Hollow. At the mention of his brother's name, Thomas stiffened. "Danny," he asked. "What about him?" Reyes watched closely. Where was he in the summer of 1998? Thomas hesitated. A beat too long. Working, I guess. He bounced around a lot. Oil fields, pipelines. You know how it is. Did you see him that June? Thomas shrugged. Maybe. Maybe not. It's been 20 years. But his hands had gone still. His eyes dropped to the tabletop. Subtle signs, but unmistakable. Fear. Or memory. Back in his car, Reyes recorded his impressions. Not proof. Not even a confession. But a shift. A crack. Enough to justify the next step. He drove south, toward the small town of San Angelo, where Daniel Harlan now lived in a modest ranch-style house at the edge of a quiet subdivision. Married. 2 children. Employed as a site supervisor for a construction firm. By all outward appearances, a stable, unremarkable life. Surveillance began discreetly. Daniel left for work at 6:30 each morning, returned around 6 in the evening, spent weekends mowing his lawn, grilling with neighbors, attending his daughter's soccer games. He laughed easily. He waved. He looked like any other man. And yet, beneath the ordinary rhythm of his days, Reyes sensed something tightly coiled. A vigilance. A carefulness. As though Daniel were perpetually aware of being observed, even when he was not. A warrant was obtained to collect a DNA sample. Officers approached him in the parking lot of a hardware store. He listened in silence as they explained the request, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the lot. When they swabbed the inside of his cheek, he did not resist. But his hands trembled. The wait for results felt interminable. Days stretched into weeks. Every phone call sent a jolt of adrenaline through Reyes's system. Every late-night email pulled him from restless sleep. He revisited the case file repeatedly, searching for patterns, connections, anything that might confirm or contradict his growing suspicion. When the lab finally called, the voice on the other end was clinical, precise, devoid of drama. The DNA was a match, a definitive match. Daniel Harlan's genetic profile aligned perfectly with the biological material recovered from Emily Carter's body. For a moment, Reyes could not speak. 2 decades of uncertainty collapsed into a single, terrible certainty. The killer had a name, a face, a life. He had walked free for 20 years, unrecognized, unchallenged, while a family mourned and a town lived in fear. An arrest warrant was issued within hours. The team assembled before dawn, gathering in the pale half-light of a cold morning. Body armor, radios, restraints. The plan was meticulous. Daniel was to be taken into custody without warning, without opportunity to flee or resist. No spectacle, no risk. They approached the house just as the sky began to lighten. The neighborhood was silent, the air still, heavy with anticipation. At 6:12 a.m., they knocked. Inside, footsteps. A pause. Then the door opened. Daniel stood there in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, hair rumpled, eyes clouded with sleep. For a heartbeat, he simply stared, confusion etched across his face. Then he saw the badges, the weapons, the gravity in their expressions. "Daniel Harlan," Reyes said, his voice steady. "You are under arrest for the murder of Emily Carter." The words seemed to strike him physically. His shoulders sagged. His mouth opened, then closed. No protest. No denial. Just a long, shuddering breath, as if a weight he had carried for decades had finally crushed him. His wife appeared behind him, panic flaring in her eyes. His children watched from the hallway, frozen. The moment fractured into chaos. Sobs, shouted questions, the clink of handcuffs, the soft murmur of officers guiding the family back. As Daniel was led to the patrol car, neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the commotion. Curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. Whispers spread. No one yet understood what they were witnessing, only that something irreversible was unfolding before their eyes. At the station, Daniel requested a lawyer. Interrogation was postponed. The evidence, however, spoke with brutal clarity. The DNA, the timeline, his proximity to Red Hollow, his abrupt departure in July of 1998. Each element aligned with chilling precision. News broke within hours. Headlines erupted across the state. Texas 1998 cold case solved. DNA breakthrough stuns investigators. Red Hollow woke to a storm of camera crews, satellite trucks, and reporters. The courthouse steps filled with microphones. Residents gathered in stunned clusters, disbelief etched into their faces. Some cried. Some stared. Some whispered the same question again and again. How could he live among us all this time? James Carter stood before the press, his voice trembling as he spoke of his daughter, of years spent chasing shadows, of nights haunted by unanswered questions. He did not express relief, only a quiet, aching exhaustion. "I just want the truth," he said. "All of it." And in a stark interrogation room hundreds of miles away, Daniel Harlan sat alone, staring at the blank wall, his reflection ghosted faintly in the two-way mirror, as investigators prepared to confront him with a past he could no longer outrun. Because an arrest is not an ending. It is a beginning. And the truth, when it finally emerges, rarely resembles the story we have told ourselves for years. Not in Red Hollow. Not in any place where the dead still wait to be heard. The interrogation room was painted a dull institutional gray, a color chosen not for comfort, but for neutrality, a shade that offered no distraction, no refuge. The overhead lights hummed faintly, casting hard shadows across the metal table bolted to the floor. Daniel Harlan sat alone, wrists cuffed, shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on a single dark stain in the corner of the room, as though the past itself had seeped into the walls. Every second stretched, thick with anticipation. Outside, detectives watched through the two-way mirror, waiting for the moment when silence would become unbearable. When Mark Reyes finally entered, he did not rush. He closed the door softly behind him, pulled out a chair, and sat across from Daniel without speaking. The air between them felt compressed, electrified. Two men separated by a table, one carrying 20 years of unanswered questions, the other carrying the weight of a secret that had never truly loosened its grip. "You know why you're here," Reyes said at last. Daniel did not look up. His jaw tightened. "You've got my DNA," he muttered. "Yes," Reyes replied. "And it puts you with Emily Carter on the night she died." The words landed heavily, echoing in the small space. For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. His breathing grew shallow, irregular. When he finally lifted his eyes, they were glassy, distant, as if he were staring through Reyes at something far beyond the room. "It wasn't supposed to happen like that," he whispered. The confession did not erupt. It seeped, slowly, reluctantly, each sentence drawn out of him like a splinter embedded deep beneath the skin. He spoke of that summer in 1998, of drifting from job to job, of sleeping in his truck some nights, of a growing sense of restlessness that curdled into anger. He spoke of isolation, of resentment, of a constant feeling of being overlooked, invisible. Red Hollow, he said, had felt like a cage, a dead-end town where nothing and no one ever changed. Emily, bright, ambitious, full of plans, became, in his fractured narrative, a symbol of everything he believed he had been denied. He described seeing her at the Blue Star Diner, night after night, memorizing her schedule, her habits, the way she always checked the parking lot before locking up. He followed her once, then again, learning the rhythm of her route home. On June 17th, he waited at the rest stop, parked just out of sight, engine idling, watching her headlights approach through the darkness. What followed unfolded in halting fragments. A confrontation, a struggle, a blow struck harder than intended. Panic. The frantic drive south, away from the lights of town, away from the possibility of witnesses. A shallow ravine, rocks dragged over a body. A desperate attempt to erase a moment that could not be undone. As he spoke, Reyes listened without interruption, noting details, timestamps, locations. Every word aligned with the physical evidence, with the timeline reconstructed from decades-old reports. The truth, once so elusive, now assembled itself with grim precision. When Daniel finally fell silent, the room seemed to exhale. His confession had not been dramatic. There were no tears, no sobs, no pleas. Only exhaustion. And beneath it something else. Relief. "I've carried it every day," he said quietly. "Every single day." Reyes left the room and stepped into the corridor, where a cluster of officers waited, tension etched into their faces. He nodded once. The case that had haunted Red Hollow for 20 years had finally spoken. But outside the walls of a station, the impact of that confession was only beginning to ripple outward. News of Daniel's arrest and admission swept through Texas with astonishing speed. Social media ignited. Talk radio dissected every detail. National outlets descended, hungry for footage, for interviews, for the raw emotion that only a solved cold case could provide. Red Hollow became a focal point, its once quiet streets now crowded with vans, cables, and flashing cameras. For the residents, the revelation was shattering. Some remembered Daniel as a quiet, withdrawn man who kept to himself. Others recalled small kindnesses, casual conversations, borrowed tools returned promptly. The realization that he had harbored such darkness fractured their sense of reality. Trust, once broken, does not easily mend. James Carter returned to the town for the first time in years. He walked the length of Main Street, past the diner, past the courthouse, past the places where his daughter had once laughed and dreamed. Everywhere he went, people stopped him, offering condolences, apologies, words that felt both sincere and inadequate. At the cemetery, he stood before Emily's grave, the wind tugging at his jacket, the sky stretched wide and empty above him. "They found him," he whispered. "They finally found him." But closure did not arrive with the words. It hovered just out of reach, a promise not yet fulfilled. The legal machinery began to turn. Prosecutors prepared charges. Evidence was re-examined, cataloged, prepared for presentation. Old witnesses were tracked down. Files were reopened. Timelines reconstructed. Every step was taken with painstaking care, aware that any misstep could unravel years of work. And yet, as the case moved forward, troubling questions surfaced. Why had Daniel left Red Hollow so abruptly? How had he avoided suspicion for 2 decades? Who else might have known? Who might have suspected, but remained silent? Reyes revisited the early investigative records, searching for signs of oversight. He found interviews that had never been followed up, tips dismissed as unreliable, potential suspects eliminated too quickly. The constraints of the era, the limitations of technology, the pressure to deliver answers swiftly, all had conspired to bury the truth beneath layers of uncertainty. One name appeared repeatedly in the margins of the old reports: Linda Morales. In 1998, Linda had been a cashier at a gas station near the rest stop. She had reported seeing a man arguing with a young woman in the parking lot late that night. Her description had been vague, her certainty shaken. Investigators at the time, overwhelmed by leads, had logged her statement and moved on. Reyes tracked her down in a small town outside El Paso. She was older now, hair streaked with gray, eyes weary. When he showed her a photograph of Daniel Harlan, her hand flew to her mouth. "That's him," she said, without hesitation. "That's the man I saw." Her voice trembled. "I always wondered. I always thought about that girl." Guilt shadowed her features. Guilt for not having done more. For not insisting. For trusting that the system would handle it. Reyes reassured her gently. "You did what you could," he said. But the words felt thin. The reality was harsher. In the chaos of those early days, a crucial thread had been dropped. As trial preparations intensified, Daniel's defense team signaled their intent to challenge the DNA evidence, to question the reliability of decades-old samples, to scrutinize every procedural step. The coming courtroom battle promised to be brutal. And beneath it all, a deeper unease began to surface. Because the more Reyes studied Daniel's confession, the more he sensed omission. Certain details were glossed over. Certain moments blurred. There were gaps, subtle but persistent, that suggested the possibility of another presence, another shadow lurking just beyond the edges of the narrative. Had Daniel truly acted alone? Or had someone else stood beside him in that dark parking lot, silent, complicit, waiting? The thought tightened Reyes's grip on the case file. If the truth was incomplete, then justice remained unfinished. And the weight of that possibility pressed down on him with relentless force. Outside, the desert wind swept across the plains, carrying with it grains of sand that scoured the earth, reshaping it grain by grain. Time did the same to memory, to evidence, to certainty. And yet, beneath the shifting surface, the past remained, waiting for the moment when it would once again break through. In Red Hollow, night fell as it always had, the sky ablaze with stars, the air heavy with stillness. But now, beneath that familiar quiet, a new tension coiled, born of revelation and doubt, of hope and fear intertwined. Because solving a cold case does not end the story. Sometimes, it only opens the door to a deeper, darker mystery. And beyond that door, the truth waits, patient and unforgiving, ready to claim its due. The confession should have been the final blow, the moment when 20 years of uncertainty collapsed into certainty, when the weight of the unknown finally lifted from a town that had learned to live in fear. And yet, As Daniel Harlan sat in his cell, staring at the concrete ceiling, and as headlines declared the cold case solved, a new unease crept into the investigation, subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. It began with the smallest inconsistencies, the kind that slip past exhausted minds but catch the attention of those who have learned to distrust easy endings. Mark Reyes returned again and again to the transcript of Daniel's confession, reading between the lines, listening to the cadence of his voice, the rhythm of his breathing, the places where he hesitated. Certain moments blurred, as if intentionally smoothed over. Certain details felt rehearsed. The narrative flowed too neatly, too cleanly, like a story told many times in private before finally being spoken aloud. Reyes had heard enough confessions to recognize the difference between raw memory and controlled recollection, between truth spilling out and truth being carefully released. He focused on the timeline. Daniel claimed he had waited alone at the rest stop, followed Emily, forced her into his truck, and driven south before dawn. But surveillance footage from a closed-circuit camera at a nearby gas station, recovered and enhanced years later, hinted at something else. A second vehicle lingering on the highway shoulder near the rest stop, its headlights briefly visible before disappearing into darkness. At the time, investigators had dismissed it as a coincidence. Now, under the harsh light of renewed scrutiny, it became a question mark burning on the screen. Reyes ordered a full reanalysis of every piece of evidence collected in 1998. Old photographs were digitized. Soil samples were retested. Fibers were re-examined. And buried within the archived reports, a detail emerged that had been overlooked for 2 decades. A partial boot print found near the ravine, distinct from Daniel's footwear, larger, heavier, suggesting another presence at the scene. The implications were chilling. If Daniel had not acted alone, then someone else had helped him. Someone who had escaped scrutiny. Someone who had lived freely for 20 years, untouched by suspicion, perhaps even respected within the community. Reyes reopened the witness files. Names resurfaced, faded ink resurrected into living relevance. One stood out: Caleb Turner. In 1998, Caleb had been a 24-year-old drifter, known in Red Hollow for odd jobs and late-night drinking. He had shared a trailer with Daniel for several months, splitting rent, moving between construction contracts. According to old statements, the two men had been close, inseparable at times. And yet, Caleb's name vanished from the investigation almost as quickly as it appeared. He had left town just days after Emily disappeared, heading west, leaving no forwarding address. Reyes traced him through employment records, credit reports, and scattered police interactions. Caleb Turner had reinvented himself multiple times, adopting aliases, drifting from town to town, rarely staying long enough to establish roots. He now lived in northern Arizona, working seasonal construction jobs, a ghost slipping through bureaucratic cracks. A team was dispatched. They found him in a trailer park on the outskirts of Flagstaff, his hair longer, his face weathered, eyes shadowed by years of restless movement. When detectives knocked, he opened the door slowly, suspicion flickering across his features. At the mention of Daniel's arrest, his face drained of color. "I told him not to," Caleb whispered, before he could stop himself. The words hung in the air, heavy, irreversible. Inside the small, cluttered trailer, Caleb unraveled. His confession poured out in fragments, tangled with fear and regret. He spoke of that summer, of shared anger, of late-night drinking, of conversations that spiraled into dark fantasies. He admitted to being with Daniel on the night of Emily's disappearance, waiting in a second vehicle, acting as lookout, too afraid, too intoxicated, too complicit to intervene. "I never touched her," he insisted. "I swear." But I didn't stop him. I froze. He described following Daniel south, watching from a distance as he dragged Emily's body into the ravine, his hands shaking so violently he could barely grip the steering wheel. He said he had wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. And so he did. By sunrise, he was already on the road, driving west, chasing anonymity. For 20 years, he lived in constant fear of discovery, jumping at every siren, every knock, every unfamiliar face. He drank heavily. He avoided relationships. He built no future, only survived the present. I thought if I stayed moving, it couldn't catch me, he murmured. But it always did. In my dreams. His arrest reignited the media frenzy. The story deepened, darkened, transforming from a solitary crime into a tale of shared guilt and buried complicity. Public outrage surged anew. How many had known? How many had suspected? How many had remained silent? In Red Hollow, the revelations reopened old wounds. Anger flared alongside grief. Some residents remembered seeing Daniel and Caleb together that summer, remembered their late-night drinking, their reckless driving, their volatile tempers. Hindsight sharpened memory into accusation. James Carter struggled to absorb the new reality. One killer had been unbearable. Two felt obscene. They both watched her die, he said quietly. That's the part one can't forgive. As prosecutors prepared charges against Caleb for accessory to murder, the narrative of the case shifted once more. What had seemed like a tragic anomaly now appeared as the product of a toxic partnership, fueled by resentment, alcohol, and unchecked rage. The randomness of the crime dissolved into a darker logic, violence nurtured in secrecy, normalized through companionship. But even as the pieces fell into place, another unsettling question emerged. Why Emily? Why her, specifically, out of all the women in Red Hollow, out of all the travelers on that highway? Reyes revisited Daniel's early statements. He spoke of obsession, of envy, of resentment. But there was something else, something hinted at but never fully articulated. A grievance, a perceived slight, a moment that had ignited his fixation. Through interviews with former co-workers, a picture began to form. Daniel had once attempted to flirt with Emily, asking her out after a late shift. She had declined politely, firmly, returning to her tables without looking back. Witnesses recalled his expression afterward. A brittle smile, eyes cold, jaw set. A rejection, minor in any other context, transformed in his mind into humiliation. From that moment, his behavior changed. He lingered after closing. He waited outside. He watched. What began as wounded pride calcified into obsession, and obsession into violence. The realization struck Reyes with brutal clarity. The crime was not random. It was personal. And that made it far more terrifying. Because personal violence carries intention. It carries planning. It carries a level of emotional investment that does not fade easily. For 20 years, Daniel had carried that night within him, compartmentalized, buried beneath routine, beneath marriage, beneath fatherhood. The mask he wore had been convincing, perhaps even to himself. The trial date was set. In the months leading up to it, Red Hollow braced itself. Hotels filled. Courtroom seats were claimed hours before proceedings began. Security tightened. Emotions ran high. The town that had once been defined by quiet familiarity now found itself under a relentless spotlight, every flaw, every misstep magnified. When Daniel was brought into court, shackled, head bowed, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Some stared in disbelief. Others glared with open hatred. A few wept silently. James Carter sat in the front row, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the man who had stolen his daughter's future. He had imagined this moment for decades, rehearsed his reaction, prepared himself for closure. Instead, he felt hollow, as if the truth had carved something out of him rather than filled a void. As prosecutors laid out their case, they unfolded the story step by step. The fixation, the surveillance, the abduction, the murder, the cover-up, the flight. DNA evidence anchored each claim, transforming conjecture into certainty. Witness testimony layered memory atop science, weaving a narrative impossible to escape. Caleb's confession followed, raw and devastating, exposing the silent partnership that had made the crime possible. His words rippled through the courtroom, eliciting gasps, sobs, furious whispers. And yet, beneath the relentless presentation of facts, an undercurrent of something darker flowed. Because even now, With 2 men charged, with evidence stacked high, with confessions recorded, the case refused to settle neatly into resolution. The desert, the ravine, the highway, the rest stop, they all seemed to whisper of further secrets, of moments still unspoken. Reyes felt it in the pit of his stomach, an instinct sharpened by years of investigation. The sense that this story, like so many others, had layers yet to be peeled away. As the trial progressed, as witnesses recounted their memories and experts dissected biological traces, the past continued to unfold, revealing not only what had happened, but how easily it might have been prevented, how close the truth had always been to the surface. And in that realization lay the most haunting truth of all. Sometimes, justice is delayed not by the absence of evidence, but by the failure to see what stands directly before us. In Red Hollow, the nights grew longer, heavier, thick with reflection. Porch lights burned late. Conversations lingered in hushed tones. The community grappled not only with grief, but with culpability, with the uncomfortable knowledge that monsters do not always arrive from afar. Sometimes they are already among us, waiting. The courtroom air felt dense, saturated with tension, as if the weight of 2 decades of silence had finally condensed into something almost tangible. Each day of testimony peeled back another layer of the past, exposing not just the mechanics of a murder, but the fragile scaffolding of human trust that had allowed it to remain hidden for so long. Jurors sat rigid, eyes fixed forward, absorbing every word, every photograph, every reconstructed timeline, while families of both victim and accused occupied opposite sides of the room, separated by more than the narrow aisle between the benches. Daniel Harlan rarely lifted his head. When he did, his gaze flickered nervously toward the jury, then dropped again, as though he could not bear to meet the eyes of strangers who now held his fate. His lawyers whispered constantly, shuffling papers, scribbling notes, crafting objections that rose and fell like brief, futile barriers against the tide of evidence. Across the aisle, prosecutors built their case with methodical precision, each fact placed deliberately, each witness carefully sequenced, constructing a narrative that tightened around Daniel and Caleb like a closing vice. But the deeper the court delved into the case, the more unsettling the story became. New witnesses emerged, people who had carried fragments of memory for years without understanding their significance. A truck driver recalled seeing 2 vehicles pulled off the shoulder near the rest stop that night, their hazard lights blinking in the darkness. A farmhand remembered hearing raised voices echo across the fields just before midnight, then the abrupt roar of engines. A bartender spoke of Daniel and Caleb drinking heavily earlier that evening, arguing in low, urgent tones, their anger simmering just beneath the surface. Individually, these details had once seemed insignificant. Together, they formed a chilling mosaic. As the prosecution laid out the sequence of events, minute by minute, the night of June 17, 1998, came back to life. Emily locking the diner doors. Her brief phone call to her mother, promising to be home soon. The long stretch of highway, empty and exposed. The rest stop lights buzzing faintly as she pulled in, unaware she was being watched. The confrontation, the struggle, the violence that followed. In the gallery, listeners flinched, some covering their mouths, others gripping the edges of their seats. The emotional gravity of the reconstruction pressed heavily on the room, transforming abstract crime into visceral reality. James Carter sat unmoving, his face carved from stone. But beneath that stillness, a storm raged. Each detail reopened wounds that had never fully healed, forcing him to relive the worst night of his life in agonizing clarity. At times, he closed his eyes, as if to block out the images. At others, he leaned forward, absorbing every word, determined to bear witness. Across the room, Daniel's wife stared at the floor, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. For her, the trial was not only an unraveling of the past, but the collapse of a present she had believed in. The man she had married, built a life with, raised children beside, was dissolving into someone unrecognizable, someone monstrous. Each revelation felt like a betrayal layered atop betrayal, eroding the foundation of her reality. Caleb Turner's testimony marked the emotional apex of the trial. Brought into court in shackles, his movements cautious, his eyes hollow, he spoke haltingly, recounting his role in the crime. He described the months leading up to that night, the escalating anger, the shared bitterness, the dangerous fantasies that had once seemed like nothing more than drunken venting. He admitted to driving the second vehicle, to waiting on the highway shoulder, to following Daniel south in stunned silence. When asked why he had not intervened, his voice cracked. "I was afraid," he whispered. "Afraid of him. Afraid of what it meant about me if I did nothing. And, in the end, I chose the fear that let me live." The courtroom fell silent. That single sentence echoed far beyond the walls of the building, reverberating through a community forced to confront uncomfortable parallels. How many times had people seen something wrong and chosen silence? How many small moments of inaction, of hesitation, had accumulated into catastrophe? As the trial progressed, attention turned to the investigation itself, to the decisions made in the chaotic days following Emily's disappearance. Defense attorneys pounced on procedural errors, highlighting missed interviews, delayed evidence processing, the lack of surveillance preservation. They painted a picture of systemic failure, suggesting that the truth had been obscured not by malice, but by overload, by human limitation, by the sheer weight of uncertainty. For Reyes, these arguments cut deeply. He revisited the early reports late into the night, tracing each step, each choice, each path not taken. He saw dedicated officers stretch thin, chasing dozens of leads, struggling with limited resources, constrained by technology that now felt primitive. He saw mistakes, yes, but also effort, urgency, genuine desire for justice. Still, the outcome could not be ignored. 20 years had passed before the truth emerged. 20 years in which a killer and his accomplice had lived free. The trial forced an uncomfortable reckoning, not only for Red Hollow, but for law enforcement across the region. Departments began reviewing old cold cases, auditing evidence storage, revisiting overlooked tips. The Carter case became a catalyst, a reminder of both the power and the fragility of justice. Outside the courthouse, demonstrators gathered, holding photographs of Emily, candles flickering in the afternoon light. Their chants drifted through open windows, a steady pulse of remembrance and demand. Never forget, never again. Inside, closing arguments loomed. The prosecution's summation was devastating in its simplicity. They spoke of a young woman with dreams, of a violent act born from entitlement and rage, of years stolen from a family and a community. They laid the evidence bare, connecting every thread, leaving no space for doubt. The defense countered with appeals to complexity, to mental instability, to the corrosive influence of alcohol, to the unreliability of decades-old memories. They urged the jury to consider nuance, to resist the pull of emotion, to focus solely on legal standards. When the jurors finally withdrew to deliberate, the courtroom exhaled in collective exhaustion. Hours stretched, then days. In Red Hollow, the waiting reopened old anxieties. Businesses closed early. Churches filled. Families gathered around televisions, refreshing news feeds, searching for updates. The town that had once waited for answers now waited for judgment. On the third afternoon, the jury returned. The room filled instantly, reporters jostling for position, cameras poised, whispers rippling through the crowd. Daniel was brought in, his face pale, his eyes unfocused. Caleb sat several rows back, shoulders hunched, gaze fixed on the floor. The foreperson stood, hands trembling slightly. "On the charge of first-degree murder," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words, "we find the defendant, Daniel Harlan, guilty." A gasp swept through the room. On the charge of accessory to murder, the verdict against Caleb followed swiftly. Guilty. James Carter closed his eyes, tears spilling freely for the first time in decades. Around him, subdued sobs rose and fell, mingled with murmurs of relief, of sorrow, of unresolved pain. Justice, at last, had spoken. But its voice carried no triumph, only gravity. Sentencing would come later. Life without parole for Daniel. Decades in prison for Caleb. Punishments commensurate with the harm inflicted, yet powerless to restore what had been lost. As the courtroom emptied, Reyes lingered, standing alone in the now silent space. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes suspended in the air. He felt no satisfaction, only a profound weariness, tempered by the knowledge that persistence had finally pierced the darkness. Yet even in that moment of resolution, the case refused to fully release him. Because beyond the verdict, beyond the confessions and convictions, lay the enduring reality of absence. Emily Carter would never return. Her voice would never again echo through the diner. Her future, once bright with possibility, had been extinguished in an instant of brutal intent. And in that absence, the true cost of the crime remained, an invisible presence woven into the fabric of Red Hollow. The town would carry it forward, etched into memory, whispered in cautionary tales, preserved in anniversaries and quiet moments of reflection. Justice had been served, but peace, elusive as ever, still lingered just beyond reach. The verdict should have been the final punctuation mark, the definitive end to a story that had stretched across 2 relentless decades. And yet, as the courthouse doors closed behind the departing crowd, as reporters packed their equipment and satellite trucks rolled away, a lingering unease clung to Red Hollow, like the dust that settled each evening on its streets. Justice had been spoken aloud, but its echo carried questions that refused to fade, reverberating through the hollow spaces left behind by loss. For James Carter, the days following the trial unfolded in a haze. The adrenaline that had sustained him through testimony and cross-examination drained away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. He returned to his small home on the outskirts of town, surrounded by boxes of memories he had never quite had the strength to discard. Emily's childhood drawings, her high school yearbooks, letters she had written from summer camp, brimming with excitement and dreams. Each artifact pulled him backward, reminding him of a life interrupted, of a future erased. He wandered from room to room, touching familiar objects, as though by tracing their outlines he might anchor himself in the present. But the silence felt heavier than ever. For years, hope and anger had given him purpose. Now, with the mystery resolved, an unfamiliar emptiness spread through his days. In quiet moments, he found himself revisiting the trial in his mind, replaying testimony, scrutinizing confessions, questioning details. Not because he doubted the verdict, but because he sought understanding. How does a man become capable of such cruelty? How does obsession metastasize into murder? How does fear turn bystanders into accomplices? There were no satisfying answers. Across town, Daniel Harlan awaited sentencing in a solitary cell, his world reduced to concrete walls and the narrow view through a reinforced window. The routine of incarceration stripped away the last remnants of the life he had constructed, leaving him alone with memory and regret. Nights were the worst. In the darkness, images surged unbidden. The rest stoplights, the desert road, the sound of Emily's voice, sharp with fear. He pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to block them out, but they persisted, relentless, unyielding. Sleep came only in fragments, haunted by dreams that blurred into waking terror. And in those dreams, he was no longer the one in control. He was the one running,